Disney animated films have had such a large cultural impact that people have started defining them in different eras. There's the Golden, Silver, and Bronze Ages, as well as the Revival and Wartime era. But the most important for this video was the Renaissance, a period of 10 years from 1989 to 1999 where 10 films were released, 8 of which are iconic parts of my childhood. I'm talking about Lion King, Mulan, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast. It's a very famous era, and specifically, it tends to hit nostalgic strings for a lot of young adults today. These are some of the most critically and commercially successful animated movies we've seen. It's a very strong component of why Disney grew into the corporate powerhouse it is. However, those films are not the center of today's video, because today, we're going to be focusing on how a llama killed the Disney Renaissance.
Will you take a look at that? Pretty pathetic, huh? Oh yeah.
The Emperor's New Groove was a satirical meta-comedy with an anti-hero for the lead that broke away from every formula that had been established over the last 10 years during the Disney Renaissance. This movie was very different than anything Disney had made before. So before we jump into what made Emperor's New Groove special, we should first understand why it was made. With some exceptions, a majority of the Disney Renaissance films were highly formulaic. While the stories were unique, the way they told those stories had a lot of overlap. A majority of them were musicals, with heroes for main characters who had a love interest, the antagonists were consistently villains, and the stories often followed the template of the hero's journey. It's important to re-emphasize that the core point of a majority of these films was the musical content. It closely emulated the style of a Broadway play, where the story and music were intertwined. And at the forefront of this development was a musical duo of Alan Menken and Howard Ashman. If you're familiar with Disney, you probably recognize these names. Together, they were responsible for the music for The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin. There's a video by Sideways about Disney's nostalgic sound that is really remarkable at highlighting how important Howard Ashman was to the Disney Renaissance. Sadly, Howard Ashman was a victim of the AIDS pandemic and passed away in 1991. Losing someone that inspired an entire era can often lead to a lack of identity when things stop working. The thing about any formula is the more you use it, the more likely it is to become antiquated. In the 90s, Pixar made Toy Story and A Bug's Life. Both were very successful and very different than what Disney was doing at the time. Eventually, Disney felt pressure to make changes. You can look at Tarzan, the last film of the Renaissance, to try to understand what happened. Tarzan was very different than the other 9 movies. Once again, I'm going to point out another Sideways video where he highlights how different Tarzan was from the rest of the Renaissance.
In my Tarzan video, I basically complained for 20 minutes straight about having music sung to the audience is not the same as having the characters sing a song.
While it still follows similar structures to the rest of the Renaissance films, all of the musical aspects are sung by Phil Collins. This degree of separation can take away a lot from the emotional connection. Personally, I think that Phil Collins' music is remarkable in Tarzan, but there's no refusing the fact that it indicated the start of the end. So Disney decided to take a new approach, to scrap its formula and do something new, and along comes Emperor's New Groove. People are pretty averse to change, so when Emperor's New Groove innovated as much as it did, it alienated a lot of Disney's audience who had come to expect certain trends with each movie. Pretty objectively, The Emperor's New Groove does not hit the same emotional chords that, let's say, The Lion King does, but I think it's sad that a lot of audiences didn't enjoy The Emperor's New Groove simply because it wasn't the same, because it eventually grew into a cult classic comedy that had profound, lasting effects on my generation's humor. When I was growing up, a big sign of the cultural impact of a comedy was how often it was quoted. Since then, it feels like memes have taken the place of that trend. And in both cases, you can point towards Emperor's New Groove as having a significant cultural impact. As a kid, movies like The Hangover and Superbad were constantly quoted. But in that same vein was Emperor's New Groove. Think about all the iconic quotes.
The poison for Cusco, the poison chosen specially to kill Cusco, Cusco's poison. Oh yeah. It's all coming together.
And it did all of this on a PG rating, because the unique thing about this movie's humor is it aged remarkably well. There's been a huge surge since The Emperor's New Groove in satire, meta-humor, and anti-heroes, to the point now where it's become a cliche in itself. And like I said in my previous video about Everything Everywhere All at Once, innovation is quickly followed by emulation. This can absolutely antiquate whatever was innovative. But with both Everything Everywhere All at Once and The Emperor's New Groove, the core of the story is still remarkable. Did you know that there hadn't been a Disney animated film with a pregnant woman in it before The Emperor's New Groove? Or what about the fact that in the 2000s, it was incredibly uncommon to have a lead character, especially in a children's movie, that was unlikable? There's something about this movie that holds a very special place in my heart. There's a possibility that it's primarily nostalgia. But independent of my love for the film, The Emperor's New Groove was the final nail in the coffin that killed the Disney Renaissance. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more weekly video essays.